Rob,
Hey, David. How are you today?
I am very well. I can hear you loud and clear. Can you
Good.
hear me okay?
Yeah. You're looking fantastic, actually. I'm loving the hair, the beard. It's a transformation, David.
Transformation. It's amazing what these little apps can do these days, isn't it? Get rid of the baldness and finally grow a beard. The best part about Zoom, everyone's gonna be shocked when they finally meet me in person.
Indeed. I heard someone say something interesting about lockdown that when we do start meeting people that we've never met before, that we think everybody's the same height, right?
Yeah,
And when we start seeing the height differentials, I think it's going to be a big shock to the system.
yeah. Oh, very well. Look, Rob, thanks for joining. I thought, yeah, I mean, obviously, we'll get into you in a moment because I think anyone who's watching this very, very privileged to, yeah, kind of hear from you today and what we're going to talk about. I thought just before we do that, anyone obviously who's tuning in, what you're tuning into is obviously this account Heads Above the Sand is 9 friends now. We've got the goal of raising money for two brilliant charities this year. One's Young Minds mental health charity, and the second one is Brain Tumor Research. And our vehicle to get there, if you like, is our legs. We're going to be running a pretty epic 5-day desert run later in October. And between now and then, we're just picking up kind of the miles, the training, the experiences, the fun, probably the lows of it as well along the way. And there's obviously a link in this page to in our profile to donate some money. But enough about us. We've got Rob. So Rob, look, I will not do it justice, but great to have you here. And who is Rob Stephenson?
Well, that's a great question, Dave. But yeah, before I get into that, kudos to what you guys and girls are doing. That it's a phenomenal physical challenge for a great cause that I know we're both very passionate about. So kudos and hats off on that. So who is Rob Stephenson? Rob Stephenson is, a father, a husband, a mental health campaigner, a cyclist, a DJ, a social entrepreneur, a CEO, and everything in between, right? So we're all many, many things, but I'm also bipolar. I experience bipolar disorder. And, for me, I'm really passionate and I have a mission of trying to help inspire the creation of mentally healthier workplace cultures and societies. But this issue is personal to me because of the challenges that I've become accustomed to with bipolar, and for many years I was kind of managing these challenges in some dark times, and then in more positive management, but doing so under the radar because of the stigma of mental ill health, and we can chat about that. But I'm defined by many things, like all of us, and as we travel through this pandemic, I think we're all finding out a little bit about who we are, right?
Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely, and definitely want to yeah get into that kind of the piece you mentioned there about sort of how your life's evolved, so to speak,
Yeah.
and how you've managed that. I remember not the first time you met me, but the first time I met you from a distance was at a Minds at Work event put on by the great Jeff McDonald, who's obviously had a real impact in your life as well. And I remember hearing you talk, and it definitely couldn't have been the one beer that I had prior to hearing you talk that left me pretty. I don't know what the way, pretty. I was almost shaking hearing you explain your story, and I think for anyone who wants to kind of probably listen to that, there's obviously some recordings of your story on YouTube and a little more. So I think that's worth listening. I think I've gone on my own journey with understanding what mental health means, seeing people very close to me kind of be impacted, had an opportunity to reflect on my own mental health, what that means. How do you view having bipolar disorder? What does that mean? What does that mean for the people who are listening to this who maybe, have never come across that before?
Yeah, thank you. So I've been reflecting on this a lot, David, because it's World Bipolar Day on the 30th of March, and I've been putting together some content and some videos, etc. Um, and I've been chatting to some other bipolar people too, and I think it's so. In simple terms, bipolar disorder or bipolar affective disorder, it's a mental illness, and it is a mental illness that is characterized by extremes of mood, from deep dark depression, where at its worst I cannot get out of bed, I cannot do my job, and I cannot look after my children. I can just lie there in a very dark state. And through to periods of mania, hypermania, where I can take risks, I seek out risk, I can make very bad decisions. I believe that I'm always right. Invariably, I'm not. I can make bad financial calls. I can buy things compulsively. But I use the words experience rather than suffer. At times I do suffer. And but at times I experience a period of drive, creativity, strength, and ability to challenge the status quo. But I think it's quite interesting when we start thinking about that question of who are we, and how our relationship with our mental health defines us. Bipolar is who I am. It's part of who I am. It's not exclusively who I am. But if I trace back to my successes, my failures, my direction of life, it's all been influenced by my mental differences, and some in a very positive way, some in a more challenging way. But it's part of who I am. So I don't really think of my mental illness being apart from me. I think it is just part of the unique characteristics that make me me. And some of it is brilliant. Some of it is a superpower. Others are the challenges we associate with mental illness. And I see those as now the price I pay for the gifts that I have. And it's a price that is big, but it's a price that I'm willing to pay. But I've, like a lot of people that have come to terms with managing a mental illness, I've got pretty good self-awareness, and I've built all of this up over the years. And I'm quite comfortable of looking at it. At times, it's been very difficult, not understanding why I would experience the mania and the compulsion and the obsessiveness that I experience, and feeling like I want to be anywhere but that darkness and that weight of depression. But actually now I know that that's part of being me, and I can manage and I can influence, and I do that. But I like the bits that give me that creativity, that let me do what I do, that let me challenge and try to change the world, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's a few. I think it's brilliant that obviously, and there's a real message in there. I think for anyone, whether they have bipolar disorder or they have any other challenge in their life, that there's advantages and understanding what those are, and being going on a journey to discover what those are. Something I've heard you talk a lot about is at one point in your career, and obviously things were happening back at, I think you've talked about at university before, but one thing that always stuck in my mind is you said how everyone in your company must have thought you had the world's worst physio, because every, whatever it was, Wednesday at 4 o'clock, you had this physio appointment in there and in reality, you were actually going to see a therapist. And then you were trying to explain to everyone how you were riding for 12 hours nonstop on a bike on the weekend as well. And I think what that also kind of reflects on is, and just to jump straight into it in the interest of time, is obviously there is this huge stigma attached. I've seen an article going around about kind of Goldman Sachs at the moment, and there's a huge stigma attached to just almost showing any form of weakness. And then when it seems that someone wants to attach it to their mental health, I think unfortunately there's a huge stigma around that. So I guess one question for you is, and to help people who are listening who maybe face that or are looking to support someone in that capacity, how did you personally go from obviously hiding it as I'm going to a physio appointment to becoming probably one of the world's most renowned campaigners, and how did you make that transition? And then what do you feel that society and organizations, or where do people need to be helping stamp out this stigma around it?
Yeah, great question. So it's interesting, isn't it? The parallel that I'm very happy for people to know that I might have a back injury that can't be fixed and would go and see a physiotherapist, but I was not comfortable sharing the fact that I was going to have my mental health attended to. And I think that's the root of this. We're quite comfortable talking about physical illness, even serious things like cancer. We would share with people. Yet the perception of mental illness means that we feel reluctant. There is that stigma there. And it's ridiculous. It is absolutely ridiculous, but it's dangerous, because the way we get help and go on the journey to recovery with mental ill health is by talking. It's by talking. And yet the stigma prevents us from talking. We think we're a burden. We think we've got to hold it in. And it's total nonsense, actually. There is no shame in seeking help for a mental health challenge in the same way there's no such shame in seeking professional help from a physical health challenge. And that's the stigma we need to smash. And I think the history comes from the way mental illness has been portrayed, you know, lunatic asylums and all that sort of language. But I think if the pandemic has shown us anything, it's that we all experience mental ill health, just like we all experience positive mental health, like we all experience physical health. It's part of being human. It's beautiful, it's complex, it's wonderful. And if we can accept that, we can then go on a journey to think, actually, it's all right to talk about it. But we do have to break down that stigma. And for me, I saw the world being more open, and Prince Harry's in the news a lot recently, but he was a catalyst by sharing his story of seeing a therapist, right, along with his brother. And workplaces in the UK started to talk about it a lot more. And I thought, you know, I'm going to share my story because I'm sick of the weight that I carry of pretending to be something I'm not. And that weight actually probably caused me more depression and made those periods longer, because I'm trying to pretend that everything's okay rather than saying, actually, I'm feeling pretty low today, and this is why. And interestingly, since I've been open, I actually get less instances of depression and you know, anxiety and the mania that I would get with bipolar, because I am, you know, I'm not carrying that burden anymore. So I think we've got to work really hard to smash that stigma. And one of the main things I do, as you know, is the Inside Out leaderboard, where I showcase business leaders who are open about the fact they have mental illness and that they manage it, because the more role models we have, the more normalized the conversation becomes.
Yeah. So I think a takeaway there is that something that gave you the that empowered you to talk about it was seeing role models, people who not in your eyes but in the eyes of other people would make it okay to speak about, which again is a pretty dire position to be in if it's got to suddenly be okay to talk about this. What and you've obviously talked there about the Inside Out leaderboard. I saw there was a big piece in the Times that you've been contributing to around this, which would be good to hear about. But the other part of it is, what advice would you give to, you know, your younger self who sat there, you know, can't necessarily get out of bed? What are the sort of, are there any, because obviously there is a lot that needs to go on here, and I guess tied into that as well, what advice would you give someone who's watching someone they care about so much, who's stuck in that position, to help move them, help move them forwards and understand this a little bit more?
Yeah. So the first bit of advice I'd give to someone who's struggling is, you're not alone, and sometimes we feel very alone. And the second bit of advice that I would give to somebody is, what you're feeling right now, this negative and this challenging feeling that's going on, will pass, because all feelings do pass, good and bad. The third piece of advice would be, seek some help. And there is no shame in seeking help. Actually, seeing a therapist is, I'd recommend for everybody, wherever they are on the mental health continuum. But there is no shame for seeking help. Find someone who you love and trust and talk about what you're going through. Both have professional help, but have those that are in your circle that know what's going on for you, because they will save your life if it gets really bad. I had that group of people around me when I first started coming to terms with this condition. I think, so that's probably what I'd say to an individual who's struggling. What I'd say to someone that's spotting someone that maybe that they love, that they care about, who's going through this sort of challenge, is you can't fix people, right? You can't fix people, and sometimes we think we need to solve a problem. We're that way inclined. That's what we do in the workplace. That's what we're used to doing. And if someone told you that they had cancer, excuse me, you wouldn't worry about whether you could prescribe the correct course of chemotherapy. What you would say is, I'm really sorry to hear that. That's rubbish. What do you need? What can I do for you? I'm here to listen. Whereas with our mental health, we worry about whether we can fix or not. And so if we accept that we can't fix, what can we do? We can listen. We can be there as a human being, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think having the confidence to just chat to people and say, this is really rubbish. What are you doing to get help? Trying to inspire that person to go and seek professional help where appropriate. Certainly if they're struggling, we need to do that. but actually having you there as a sounding board, as a person, just sit there, non-judgmental listening. That's kind of what you need, because I didn't always want to talk to people, but it
Hmm.
was really helpful to know that I had a group of people that knew what was going on for me, that would be available to listen.
Hmm. Hmm. I think that's that's fantastic, and I'm probably hearing what you say about someone who's in that position. I know for myself, who I wouldn't say has poor, mental health by any extremes or any illness related to it, but I do know that when I'm not having a great day, everything you talked about there is exactly what always ends up, making me feel better by the end of the day. That bit around talking, and one of the things I found already with this running we're doing is it's giving that opportunity to have a bit more thinking space. In some ways, slow down actually.
Yeah.
In some ways, and just get out and have a chat with, whether it's one of the other guys, who I'm doing the running with, Charles, who's doing it with us. He and I went out for a run together a couple of weekends ago, and came away feeling like all this weight had been lifted off my shoulders because I've been able to have a chat with him about something that that sometimes is a bit more difficult to have for whatever reason. So here's a question for you. In the workplace, this is something I really struggle with. I'm still not quite sure how you would phrase it. If someone has got bipolar disorder, what is the right phrase to use? Could you say, would someone want to be said, this person has a mental health illness? What are the right ways to talk about these things? Because I think stigma can also, and the reluctance can talk about things also, not just because people don't want to, but because they don't know how to.
Yeah.
So if you are in a workplace and you've got a colleague or a friend at work or whatever it might be who's struggling with something, what's the best thing to say? Do you say, I understand you have a mental health challenge, or you have a how do you approach that?
Yeah, so I think, if someone's open about it, you can ask them, right? So how would you refer to yourself? So for me, I say, I do use the word bipolar disorder because it's commonly understood, but actually I don't really see it as a disorder. I see it as part of who I am. So I
Yeah.
would more regularly say I am bipolar these days, or I experience bipolar. But I think some people, if they're open about whether it's anxiety or panic attacks, I tend to think it's better. And I'm going to contradict myself a little bit. If you're referring to somebody else, to refer to the condition rather than label the person bipolar
Hmm.
or depressive. So I think someone who experiences depression, or you experience anxiety, you experience bipolar, because you're not totally defining the person by their mental illness. Um,
Hmm.
Now, some of what we're discussing here, the fact of the matter is they are mental illnesses. Bipolar is a mental illness.
Hmm.
Depression is a mental illness, but that doesn't define the whole person. I think the bigger issue and the wider issue is, look, when we can talk about mental ill health like we talk about physical ill health, and we can all dip into mental ill health as a result of what's going on in the pandemic, isolation, worries about the economy, whatever it might be. That can just send us down. About my form score scale to a 4 out of 10, for example. That doesn't mean you're always going to be a 4 out of 10, and it doesn't mean you've got an illness that's making you a 4 out of 10. But actually, it does mean you're experiencing temporarily a period of mental ill health.
Hmm.
And I think I quite like that as a phrase, mental ill health, because it's not defining someone by their illness, but it's recognizing that we're all on a continuum from struggling through to thriving, and we move up and down that continuum regularly, daily, even hourly.
Hmm. Right. That's really helpful. Very selfishly, that answered the question a burning question I had. So hopefully it's useful for other people. Um, you've obviously found, as you said at the start, you found some ways to maximize your bipolar disorder, so being quite direct about it,
Yeah.
and found ways to, you just use the word form.
Yeah.
Now, you've got this awesome technology company you started, this app called Form, which I've just started getting into. Um, Tell us about that, but tell us about the why. And I think that might also link into the real kind of question here, which is, what are the things that you do? And obviously, this is incredibly personal, but what are the things that you do that help you manage that continuum of mental health?
Yeah, well, you've just hit the nail on the head there, isn't it? It's incredibly personal, and managing one's well-being is highly individual and highly personal. So, for me, a therapist gave me this tool of giving myself a score out of 10 every day to just track how I'm feeling about my mental health. You know, I use the word form because we're trying to rebrand mental health a little bit. Yeah, so saying, what's your form today? There's quite some nice sporting analogies there. But the many years ago, probably about 12 years ago, this therapist gave me this tool. And for years, I've been tracking my mental health with a score out of 10. So today I'm a 6 out of 10, which is average form. I've been trending down a little bit, partly due to a few parenting issues. I'm not being the best dad at the moment. I'm overtired. I'm a bit snappy. My children are a bit of a challenge, not handling it as well as I could. And that energy levels feeling low has probably knocked me from a 7 to a 6. So that's quite useful to know, because I know to get back up to a 7 or an 8, I need to prioritize connections with my children and prioritize sleep. So I've built up some self-awareness of what is driving my form or my mental well-being. And over the years, this has been really helpful in just building up that knowledge of what might be affecting how I'm feeling. And that knowledge then becomes powerful because you can then take micro steps to just nudge your form upwards. And so it's not fail-safe. It doesn't solve depression for me. But if I'm a 7, 6, 5, then I can often think, right, I need to back off. I need to get some more sleep. I need to cancel a few meetings. I need to get outside into beautiful nature to give myself a boost in form. Now, so that's the history. It's been really good for me personally. As a campaigner, I started publishing this and getting really interesting reactions to either my email signature or my LinkedIn profile of people being curious and connecting with me on this number. And so we've developed FormScore, which is an app. It's in the app stores and the Google Play Store. And very simply, you know, you've seen it. We're connected on the app, so you can see my 6 out of 10 today. I can see your score. And it provides an ability to notice when a friend might need a check-in, because we can see each other's form scores to facilitate a bit of that peer support. But in answer to your question, at an individual level, what it's helping you do is build up the knowledge of what's driving your score at a personal level. And therefore, that then allows us to really adjust our lifestyle a little bit to maintain good form. So for me, the typical drivers are exercise. You know, I normally cycle a lot to stay well, to prioritize sleep. That's normally a big driver of my form, and connections. But there are a whole bunch of others that other people might need to focus on: stress management, helping others, sense of purpose, financial wellness, nutrition. You know, I tend to score quite well on those regularly. So it helps build up that, I call it the gift of self-awareness, you know, a few moments of reflection each day to help you proactively manage your own form. But then importantly, the magic, I think, of FormScore is that it facilitates peer support and connection.
Yeah, that's really interesting. We'll put a link wherever this goes. I guess when it goes out, we'll put a link to Form, to download it. It's super quick to set up, and it just prompts you, and you can make those connections. So yeah, I'm looking to connect with a few more people on it and what have you. I think something that's really interesting about this personalization piece is that there's these billion valued businesses like Netflix and like Deliveroo, and they crack this whole thing around how to personalize what you want, and even go one beyond that and start to influence what you want, and which has obviously got its ups and downs to it as well. And I think it's interesting because there's something to be said there, that the evidence is there that there are businesses that are operating because they provide this personalized. And I think it's taking that and applying that to other aspects of our life. And we had Vanessa, who's the development director for Young Minds, one of the charities we're supporting, on here the other week, and she just said, you know, there is something out there for everyone, but you do have to go on that journey to to look out for what it is. And I think obviously, in the context of your personal interest and some of your expertise in sport and cycling, I saw something that a slightly ironic tweet from Johnny Whale, who I think who has bipolar disorder himself, who's a professional cyclist, and it was a retweet of Dave Brailsford, obviously the head of Team Sky, coming out saying that the key to their signing Rohan Dennis's success is going to be him feeling happy and supported. And his tweet was like, shock horror. Suddenly someone's figured out that actually being happy, improves performance. So I think it's important, to continuously
Yeah.
reflect on that.
But sorry to talk over you a second, but so Johnny Whale, we both know Dan Bigham, and Dan would be happy for me to share this story. So a track cyclist team, they measure power to the nth degree, and
Mm,
Johnny, when he's in one of his low periods, will have a 30% drop in physical power output as compared to when he's at his baseline level. And that just shows you the power of our mental health
yeah,
on performance. And that's physical performance. We use our job, for our jobs, we use our minds. So you think of what that drop in mental power is when we have suboptimal mental health. And this is the massive performance opportunity that I think employers have. And then secondly, on personalization and Netflix type stuff, for me, I think the really interesting thing with Form Score is what we're trying to do is build up this knowledge of what is driving form to allow people to tag whether it's sleep or exercise. And
hmm
then we can absolutely personalize content, link in with marketplaces such as Better Space, which is a great business that are offering well-being solutions to give people that personalized experience for good.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I am conscious that you've got of your time, and that you've got lots of other important things to be doing your day. So I thought, just to sort of close this off, and obviously if anyone listening has a question, I've seen a lot of comments, things along the lines of "that's genius" and "100% Rob." So loads of people agreeing with what you have to say, or opening their eyes, going through a bit of a paradigm shift in terms of how they view this themselves. But to end, something we're asking everyone when we do these interviews is, what's been your biggest challenge to date?
So genuinely, I think the biggest challenge that I've overcome, and I can point to a lot of challenges, riding the Tour de France on a static trainer, as you witnessed, stuff that I'm doing with the Inside Out leaderboard. There's been lots of big challenges, but actually my biggest challenge to date, genuinely, is coming to terms with how my mental health integrates into who I am. Really that self-awareness that I've had to build up in order to save my life and enable me to continue living, that was a big challenge to overcome. But actually the results of having gone through that challenge and overcome it means that my mental health and my mental health challenges are actually part of what I would term my superpowers. But that journey of self-discovery has been my biggest challenge, but my greatest achievement.
That's amazing. Really, really, really powerful. Really appreciate that, Rob. Look, thanks obviously so much for the time. Thanks for everyone who's listened. I'm sure there's been, some great comments there, and really support of that. What we'll do is we'll put some links to you, to Form, in the description when this goes up. Obviously, anyone tuning in who wants to dig into this anymore, I'm sure Rob will be receptive to you reaching out. Honestly, Rob, every time we chat, it gives me a lot of energy to go away and sort of kick my day on, and real privilege, and thanks so much for making the time.
David, thanks for having me, and look, best of luck with what you're doing, and more power to you in terms of the training and the event itself.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Cheers, buddy.
See you.
Bye.